Hello, my name is Dennis, and I am recording this for the CYBÖR virtual game room. This is my hobby room. Today I will be painting a Reaper Miniatures shipping container. I primed it green with some spray paint, and I utilized a stencil that my buddy Greg over at Wicked Elf Miniatures made us. You can see it right here. He put a bunch of different science fiction companies on there, and I just taped it on and hit it with a can of spray paint. No airbrush required. What I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be weathering it with a couple different paints. I'm using the Secret Weapons line of rust colors. You see that they come in a bunch of different colors, from dark rust all the way down to a lighter rust color. Rust is darker when it's older, and it gets lighter as when it's newer. So they have a wide variety. You don't have to use anything that's called rust. You can use a dark brown, dark oranges to yellows and oranges from any brand you like. I just happen to like the Secret Weapon brand. One of the things I like to do when I paint a shipping container or anything and I'm going to weather it and rust it up is choosing colors not necessarily based on how old I think the container is going to be or how old the rust is going to be, but on how the color is going to look compared to the paint I'm using. So as you see here, if I were to use dark rust on a dark green container, it wouldn't really show well. So I'm using some lighter rusts. So I'm going to put away these dark rusts and just start with the middle color rust here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a sponge to dab it on. That gives a very natural look to the rust. And it actually, because I'm using a sponge, it gets a little bit three-dimensional as I apply it. So I'm going to start with the mid-color rust there. Here's my sponge. Just like dry brushing, you blot some off and just start applying it in random spots and on the edges, places where the paint would definitely chip. In some places, you just do it because it looks cool. So again, I like to do the edges. When you do the edges, you want to make sure you wrap it around to both sides, especially on the corners, so that way the rust isn't just on one side. I like to do it a little bit on the hinges here. You're going to get a lot of chips where people are touching the shipping container, or the shipping container is bumping into things. And just going to keep applying some of the dark rust on the side. And I'm going to come up to the top of the shipping container and just do a couple areas up there as well. Now that I'm done with that one, I'm going to do the orange rust. And you'll see I'm going to need to use my famous pokey tool to open this up. I should have made sure my paints were working before filming the video. So bear with my technical issues. We're not going to blame this on Secret Weapon, we're going to blame this on user error. So now I'm going to dab on the orange rust in basically over the areas of the darker rust, just like highlighting. Unlike highlighting, you don't have to worry if the lighter color gets somewhere else on the shipping container. That's just somewhere that has newer rust. You just dab it on the dark rust areas, and you'll dab it on a couple other areas where you want to have a little bit more color. And if you were doing a light colored shipping container, you might want to do the darker end of the rust. I've done a couple yellow shipping containers or yellow garbage skiffs, and I started using the orange and worked my way up to the yellow, and then you can't really tell that you did anything, and the rust effect is lost. So this is a kind of something to pay attention to. It's making sure that your rust is going to actually show up once you do all the work to add it on. I'm going to hit the roof. And now we're going to go with the brightest rust, the yellow rust here. Again, going to need to use the pokey tool. There we go. And the same as before, only this time we're going to cover the rust areas a little bit less than before. Again, you want to get the previous colors to show through. This way it shows just different ages of rust in the same patch. So again, make sure when you do the edges or the corners that you get both sides of the corner. It looks more natural that way. There's going to be a lot of damage towards the bottom of the shipping container. And you can see I'm doing a much lighter touch with this final rust color than I did on the previous ones. I'm trying to get a little bit less coverage. There you go. Notice I'm spinning it around a few dozen times just to make sure I got all the sides. I hate when I get to a project and I've covered three-fourths of the thing and then have to go back and touch up the last one. So I always like to make sure I get everything. Now I'm going to do some washes. I'm going to start with the Agrex Earth Shade from Games Workshop. It's a dark brown wash. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by applying some along the bottom of the shipping container where water and grime and gunk is going to naturally collect along that lip along the bottom. So just run the brush along the bottom there. And I'm going to come up along the top and put in some more grime and just do some downward streaking. Real nice thing about the corrugated shipping container is kind of forces the grime to go down the corrugation, so it forms natural looking rivulets of junk. So I'm going to do that on all the sides. I'm going to focus a little bit along the area of the hinges and where the doors open. If you ever look at where some natural weathering occurs outside, you'll notice that the grime patterns, the streaks don't always go down the exact same length, so you want to make sure you leave it uneven just to make it look natural. If all your grime ends up at the same exact level, then it's just not going to look quite right. I've been to all four sides, and now I'm going to do the top. With the top, I'm going to do some natural buildup of grime in the corners and along the edge of the shipping container. And I'm going to do some kind of random splotches throughout the top as well, just to show some grime getting built up. Now I'm going to switch over to the Games Workshop Seraphim Sepia, and I'm going to basically repeat the process. Now this is versus being a regular brown, this is more of a sepia tone, and it's going to add some depth. And if you go outside and look at some buildings that haven't been cleaned in a while, you'll notice that the grime isn't all going to be the same color. So tossing in a lighter brown and it's going to make things look a little bit more natural. Also kinds of shows some different ages of the dirt, stuff that's been there for a while, newer stuff, just makes it look more natural and weathered over time instead of just going with one color. Again, you'll see I'm focusing on the bottom where gunk's going to grow and build up. And then also some streaking down from the top. I'm also going to get some dirt running right through that bright white for the Wayne Enterprises logo. Again, the white certainly would not stay there for very long. If you notice, I got some sepia up on the edges. I didn't quite want it there. Just brush it off with your finger. This thing about, especially with washes, they come up pretty easily, and you're not going to get it completely off with just your finger, but it will make the effect more subtle. So as you see, I'm going a little heavier here with the sepia than I did with the Agress Earth shade, and that's because I like the subtle effect a little bit more. I'm going to do a Biltan Gray wash. What this is going to do is kind of represent algae growth and just kind of a moisture environment. And even though it's going on a green shipping container, it's a different enough color on the shipping container that you're going to notice it if you look up closely, and even from a distance, it's going to provide a nice variant to the color. I do make sure to get some on the white for the Wayne Enterprises symbol, just because that'll make it, that's where you're really going to notice it, and it cuts down on that stark white. And same deal, I'll just build some algae build up on the top of the shipping container here. Again, that just adds some variant to the color. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take that orange rust color, I'm going to water it down a little bit, and I'm going to make some rust streaks. And I'm going to start in some of the areas that already has the rust spots, and I'm just going to draw the brush down. You can tell initially I don't like the coverage. I watered it down too much, so I'm just going to go back to some of the less diluted paint and just go back over the area I didn't like initially. So I'm going to do some streaking downwards. You try to keep your streaks as parallel to each other as possible. It makes it look more natural. Most of the time, the rust will be going straight down. Although if you don't get a perfectly straight line, these things have a lot of divots and dents and things like that, which will cause the rust to not go straight down. So you don't have to worry about it being 100% perfect. Again, the nice thing about this particular piece is the corrugation really kind of helps you, it guides your paintbrush, which is really nice. There we go. I'm going to come back in along those hinges again. And with this one, I kind of just stuck with the orange midtone. You could do a couple different rust colors, but I really like the way that the orange watered down looks when it's being pulled over the dark green color there. It kind of has enough variant for my liking. If you wanted to do some highlights to that or different colors, certainly you can do so. What I'm doing here is I watered down the rust even further, and I'm just kind of making it pool out. That kind of again, that's just where the paint's gonna, or the rust, when it's sitting in water, is gonna kind of pull away from the container. I'm gonna put that in the corner there. Now the wash on the top wasn't quite dry, and that's not going to be an issue because, and that's just going to help muddy the paint, and that's kind of what we're going for with weathering, right? It doesn't need to be a super bright, clean color. You want it to look dirty and just built up and sitting in some dockyard somewhere for a while. Again, give it a couple once overs and see if you're happy where we have it. Decide to add a little bit more right down the white logo. Again, that logo wouldn't stay white for very long, and it's nice to dirty it up some. You can tell right there I wasn't happy with the amount I added, so I was just able to brush it off with my finger, and that'll form kind of a little subtle color in the background as well. I go back and add my thin lines. And for my next step, I'm going to add some scratches, and I'm just going to use thin down black paint for that. You want to do is just thinly draw out a couple lines where maybe a forklift or something scratched into the paint. Again, if you're not happy with it, just wipe it away and try again. I'm a little ham-fisted when it comes to painting thin lines, so you're going to see me wiping it away a couple times during the next minute or so. Don't worry about that. Just wipe it away and start over again. It's just paint, so you can always wash it away or add some more. Not every scratch has to be running in the same line. Some of them, they're not necessarily from a forklift or something scratching the container. It could be somebody with a tool or something like that. So just put a couple different angles or wherever you think a scratch would go. For the next step, it's going to be a highlight. Uh, Sometimes highlight might be a kind of a misnomer. We're kind of expecting the highlight to go directly on top, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some white and I'm going to put it directly under my black line, and this is going to kind of show where the light is reflecting off the bottom of the scratch. Again, you want to go super thin line here, directly under the scratch line. Some people might feel tempted to highlight completely around the scratch. You don't need to do that. Just directly below where the light would catch. Knock these two scratches out, and we're going to move on to the next step. What we're going to do next is I'm going to use some weathering pigments. I'm going to grab a cup to put the weathering pigments in. And I'm going to choose which color I'm going to use. Again, I'm going to use Secret Weapon products here. I'm using Secret Weapon Earth Colors. You kind of see me debating which one I'm going to go for. Don't worry, I'm coming back. Here we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just toss a little bit in this cup here, and I'm going to put in some of the Secret Weapon Pigment Fixative. And I'm basically going to make a wash out of this. And one of the things, if you're using a dry pigment and you apply it to your figure, and then you use a varnish to fix it, it's going to look nice and dry. It's also going to blow, a lot of it's going to blow away. If you mix it in with the fixative here, it's going to look wet initially on application. However, it's going to dry. It's going to dry looking dry. It's not going to have that moist look. It's going to look exactly how you want it to. Again, one of the things here that you're going to see, the nice thing about paint is you can always add more. That's with a weathering pigment though, you can't really take it away like you can with paint. So you do have to be careful that you're getting the amount of opacity you want initially. You're going to see here that I've decided that it's not quite dark enough, and so I'm going to go back and I'm going to add some more pigment to my cup here because I just didn't like how it was coming out. So I'm going to kind of hit some of those areas again, and kind of like with the paint itself, you can see I'm going to go to an approximate level on the bottom of that shipping container, but I'm going to make sure that it's not even, and the dirt's going to build up at different levels and different points. So you want to make sure that it looks natural and it's not all at the same height. Knock that out real quick. So like anything else, you can just knock some of the fixative off of the brush and just put it on your paper towel if you have too much on your brush. So I'm going to put a little bit there, yep. And I didn't quite like how it looked. So I had to, fortunately, it had just been applied, so I was able with a little bit of pressure to pull most of it off. But again, unlike paint, that's not going to come off completely. So you do have to be careful. Let's take a look at how it is so far. And add a little bit of weathering pigment to the corners of the roof. And just in a couple of random spots. There we go. I don't know what got weathered more, the container or my hands, but there you go. We're looking at about 25 minutes worth of work here, and I think it looks pretty good. It's a good thing I like the method because I've got at least another 23 sitting directly behind me.